On April 5th, 1911, 1911, 1911, 1911, 1911. On April 5th, 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 on April 5th. On April 5th, 1911, 400,000 people lined the rain-drenched sidewalks of New York as an empty horse-drawn hearse crept from the dank, narrow streets of the Lower East Side toward the skyscrapers towering over Madison Square. New Yorkers from all walks of life had come to pay tribute to the unidentified victims, the unidentified Triangle Fire, 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 the unidentified.
Is everybody feeling tearish tonight?
On April 5th, 1911, 400,000 people lined the rain-drenched sidewalks of New York as an empty horse-drawn hearse crept from the dank, narrow streets of the Lower East Side toward the skyscrapers towering over Madison Square. New Yorkers from all walks of life had come to pay tribute to the unidentified victims of the Triangle Fire, the deadliest workplace accident in the city's history. A few weeks earlier, the workers had been forgotten cogs in America's immense industrial machine. Now, 1 in 10 New Yorkers were there to claim them as their own.
Public conscience thought they had failed each other, they had somehow, they had not protected them, they had somehow, they had not protected them, they had somehow, they had not protected them,
These girls can't die in vain. That was said over and over and over again, as if the city had somehow turned its back on them, as if the city had somehow turned its back on them, as if the city had somehow turned its back on them,
If they weren't massive, if they weren't very easy for the city and the city officials to say, well, this is just a sudden act, this is just a sudden act, but there's nothing in it, 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 but there's nothing in it.
Is everybody feeling tearish tonight?
On April 5th, 1911, 400,000 people lined the rain-drenched sidewalks of New York as an empty horse-drawn hearse crept from the dank, narrow streets of the Lower East Side toward the skyscrapers towering over Madison Square. New Yorkers from all walks of life had come to pay tribute to the unidentified victims of the Triangle Fire, the deadliest workplace accident in the city's history. A few weeks earlier, the workers had been forgotten cogs in America's immense industrial machine. Now, 1 in 10 New Yorkers were there to claim them as their own.
Public conscience thought they had failed these young women. They had somehow not protected them. They had somehow not protected them. They had somehow not protected them.
These girls can't die in vain. That was said over and over and over again, as if the city had somehow turned its back on them, as if the city had somehow turned its back on them, as if the city had somehow turned its back on them.
If they weren't massive funerals, it would have been very easy for the city and the city officials to say, well, this is it's sort of a natural disaster, it's a terrible thing, but there's nothing anyone could do about it. But there's nothing anyone could do about it. But there's nothing anyone could do about it.
If you ask the average American, is it okay for workers to work in a shop where the conditions are so dangerous that it could cost them their lives? And not have government intervene, most people would say no. There's a line. The triangle fire through that line, burn that line, really into the nation's consciousness. The nation's consciousness. The nation's consciousness.
Many were young women in their teens. Some were girls as young as 10. They were immigrants, Italians who had fled natural disasters, Jews who had escaped persecution in Russia, Ukraine, Poland.
I was eager to begin life on my own responsibility, but was also afraid.
Economic security was the American dream for many of them. Making enough money to be able to put food on the table, not worry about making rent for the week.
As the throng disappeared into sweatshops and tenement apartments, several hundred workers veered off toward the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in the heart of Greenwich Village. At the base of the Ash Building, men and women stepped into wooden freight elevators, and stepped into wooden freight elevators, and stepped into wooden freight elevators, then to the Triangle Factory on the 8th and 9th floor, on the 8th and 9th floor, factory on the 8th and 9th floor. Catherine Maltese, whose 13-year-old daughter wasn't too young to join her on the factory floor.
High ceilings, big windows. Compared to the whole stove-heated, dusty, hugely crowded sweatshop rooms, Triangle was a plum. Triangle was a plum. Triangle was a plum. Triangle was a plum. Triangle was a plum.
But even at the Triangle, sewing machine operators faced a 14-hour work week for $2 a day.
Sometimes you work at a big machine, and it's not working right. One of the needles skips, and you get blamed for mistakes. The same machine. The same machine. The same machine. The same machine. The same machine.
On the 10th floor, the Triangle owners could feel their vast machine shuddering below. Machine shuddering below. Max Blank and Isaac Harris had made Triangle $1 million a year behemoth. Made Triangle $1 million a year behemoth, mass-producing the garment every modern woman must have. The shirtwaist. The shirtwaist. The shirtwaist. But their empire, as they saw it, was under constant siege. Was under constant siege. Was under constant siege. After 20 years, the shirtwaist was getting stiff. The shirtwaist was getting stiff. The shirtwaist was getting stiff. Fashion editors began to showcase colorful dresses, and turned up their noses at the bourgeois waist. The bourgeois waist. At the bourgeois waist. No matter how much silk embroidery Harris added to their designs, the Triangle sales charts sloped down. Charts sloped down. Charts sloped down. Profit margins matched this year's fashion. Easy made shoes. Easy made shoes. Easy made shoes.
As successful and as rich as they were one bad season away from being broke. The competition was enormously fierce. 500 blouse makers on the island of Manhattan alone. 500 blouse makers on the island of Manhattan alone. 500 blouse makers on the island of Manhattan alone.
So it's all about continuous production, get as much cloth turned into a product as possible at the lowest possible price. At the lowest possible price. At the lowest possible price.
All over the city, garment workers were agitating for shorter hours. Agitating for shorter hours. Agitating for shorter hours. Agitating for shorter hours. Better pay. Better pay. Better pay. Better pay. Safer shots. Safer shots. Safer shots. Safer shots. Unions. 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 Harris and Blank saw it in the papers every day, but on the streets below. Workers were walking off the job by the tens. Scores. Hundreds. 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 The partners even suspected talk of union on their own shop floor. Talk of union on their own shop floor.
Unionization was the single largest fear for most of these employers. They were terrified that unions would come in because that would diminish their authority over the workplace. Unionization was the single largest fear for most of these employers. They were terrified that unions would come in because that would diminish their authority over the workplace. That would diminish their authority over the workplace. That would diminish their authority over the workplace.
Speed mattered more than ever at the triangle. Speed mattered more than ever at the triangle. The men had invested in the most up-to-date technology, and it had to pay. 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 The old pedal pump sewing machines made 34 stitches a minute. With the new electric machines, the girls were expected to make 3,000 stitches a minute, and no mistakes. And no mistakes.
Rubber heels had just come into use, and you rarely heard the foreman sneak up behind you, watching. And you rarely heard the foreman sneak up behind you, watching.
A lot of these young women whose families depended on their earnings, it was very, very stressful. They messed up a garment, and their pay was docked,
Max Blank was kept awake nights, calculating the dollars he might lose if workers walked out with shirtwaists tucked in their bags, or fabric. To ensure that nobody slipped out uninspected, Blank ordered that the only other exit at Washington Place be kept locked.
Most circumstances, the grievances of their workers treat them like stuck-up, like animals, like pieces, like animals, like pieces, like animals, like pieces. There's no government intervention. There's no labor legislation. There's really very little sanitary legislation protecting the health and safety of workers. There are no minimum wage laws or maximum hour laws. Nobody's watching. Extravagant, conspicuous consumption.
They can walk up Fifth Avenue and see limestone mansions as far as the eye can see. They can see all around them that there's all kinds of wealth.
You are so beautiful, both hands. You are so rich. And you look so dressed, in the back, the bustle. I wanted to grow up doing earrings and hats and high heels. I liked music. I liked lectures. I wanted to learn things. I wanted to learn everything. The only thing is, the time. I needed time. Why were we crammed into the crowded darkness? Why were we crammed into the crowded darkness? Why were we crammed into the crowded darkness? Why are we wasting with want? Why are we wasting with want? Why are we wasting with want?